Hey everybody, welcome to the Tech Founder Show. It's Tony Zeiss here, back for another week. I'm joined by Andy Elko. Andy, how's the weather out there?
Pretty nice. Can't complain. Got to enjoy the summer, right? How are you doing?
For sure, doing well, doing well.
The air conditioning on?
No, I actually just have some windows open. I was outside a little earlier this morning, but moved inside just in case there's birds or something crazy going on out there to disrupt the podcast. Yeah, so... Well, cool.
What do we have today?
Yeah, so diving into an area that we have not yet, but we're talking to Seung-won Lim. He's the CEO and co-founder at ImpriMed, and they provide precision medicine for pet cancer care, which is a pretty awesome application of technology. So with that, Seung-won, how are you doing?
Great. How are you guys? I'm doing very well here in Palo Alto. Nice weather here. Yeah.
I bet. Very cool. You guys always have nice weather in Palo Alto.
Right.
Yeah, we're here.
We've got the rain here, which I don't know if you've got as much out there.
Yeah. Well, mostly it's good. Too hot in the sunside, but when you go to the shade, it's always cool. Yeah.
There you go. So very cool. Well, thank you for joining us. We'd love to hear. Just tell us. Perhaps the origin. I mean, I shared just the very short description of what ImpriMed does, but tell us about the business, and we'd love to hear the origin. Where did it start? How did you come up with the business and take it to market?
Sure, happy to do that. First of all, thanks for the invitation. I really enjoyed your show. So this is a great opportunity for me to share our story to your audiences. So actually, Tony, you made one great sentence to describe our company. We are providing a precision medicine for our dogs and cats suffering from cancer. So I know it's a kind of refreshing idea, and it's a new application of our AI and the biology to our pets. So there are so many pets out there who are suffering from cancer, just like human. Actually, there are more number of dogs and cats who suffer from cancer. For example, actually there is a statistics that 6 million dogs and 6 million cats, they are diagnosed with cancer every year, compared to 1.7 million human in the US are newly diagnosed. So it's a huge number. In total, 12 million patients out there. So how we start this idea is that I am personally very passionate to cure cancer. So I spent, before this ImpriMed, I spent more than a decade to develop a new cancer therapeutics, novel cancer drugs, something like, we are all familiar with the gene therapeutics, something like, mRNA, Moderna and Pfizer, it's all mRNA. It's one of the gene therapeutics there. Of course, it's a vaccine. Well, I 10 years ago, around 10 years ago, I was very passionate about gene therapeutics. And then also I did a PhD developing protein therapeutics for cure cancer. So all this kind of journey was really, really exciting. You can imagine that, of course it's poor mice, but we humans are using a mice model in the lab. We inject the human cancer in the mice, and a big chunk of tumor there. It's amazing to see that the drug that I developed in the lab with my pipetting, and then make the drug and then inject into the mice, and then you can see that the tumor size gradually shrink down. Yeah. It's amazing. One of the amazing things that you can actually see. I really enjoy this kind of things, and then I always imagine that how it will be amazing if I can bring this drug into the patient bedside after 10 to 15 years later. That because there is average, it takes 10 to 15 years from the design to the drug, but it actually takes longer than that. This is the average from big pharmaceutical like GSK and then all the other like Pfizer. But it's kind of ironic that I was really enjoying this kind of new cancer drug development side, but more and more I go deeper inside this field. I always ask myself though, are we really doing the best thing to use our currently available drugs? Because there are so many people out there who needs a treatment today. They don't have time to wait for like 15 years, and then it will be a really, really expensive drug once it comes to the market as a new drug. So most of the people, you can see that they are already, they don't have time to wait. So they always are treated with the conventional drug, or what are the available in the clinic right now. So more and more I just like obsessed with that kind of question. What is the best way to help the people who really need the treatment right now? So that's the kind of basis of this company. What we do here at ImpriMed is that we optimize and then come up with the best optimal drug for each individual patient. And then there comes the question here that why pets first? I actually just mentioned that pet has a huge number of patients out there. This is not an estimate. These are the patients. 12 million are the patients who are actually diagnosed in the veterinary clinic. I see cancer right now as a kind of engineering problem. So more than 100 years, we have collected a lot of data, a lot of information from biologists, and then cancer biologists, all the molecular biologists, medical doctors, nursing staff, the academia and industry, all the researchers, and we collected all these great amount of information, and we have a great tool, that AI. So what I see cancer, why I see cancer is that we have cancer is an engineering problem, is that there are a great amount of information out there. The problem here is that how we can choose the right information for the right application. So I think that that's how the AI or machine learning can do really, really good. So I really want to make the company have a strong and balanced team between the biological research scientists and then the in silico or computational scientists. So we have our wet lab team and then dry lab team all together. And then I'm very fortunate to have really, really great people there. But to do the AI or prediction modeling, we need a lot of patients, live data, not the dead data, which are already published out there. Patients are already there. But what we need is a great amount of live data we can track, and then the fresh data from live patients, and then we do the prediction, and then actually get the the proof of that concept or proof of that prediction algorithm by comparing the actual clinical outcomes. So to do all these things in a very short amount of time, it's really hard to do in human. So that's why we start with the pets. So I always, when I pitch to our investors to help them to understand our strategy, instead of the punching to the really, really thick wall to go to the human, cancer cure, we are building our ladder to just go up and then go. And then what is great thing about this is that during this going up, these obstacles, we are actually treating our precious animals. And then all the knowledge and then experience that we are collecting here definitely will help the human patients later. So what our company is doing, finding out the right drug for the dogs and cats. But I can rephrase that, we are very passionate to save our pets first, and then next we're going to save our pet owners.
So that's super fascinating what you guys are doing. So just to be clear, you guys are targeting the pets first, but then the goal is to build this model and approach and then be able to treat humans in the same kind of way. Is that correct?
So yes, that's our journey. That's our kind of scaling up. But I really hate to say that we are kind of using our dogs and cats as intermediate. We are a company providing precision medicine for all the lives who are suffering from cancer. Yeah.
And I would just ask the question, is it because you can take more action faster when treating pets? I imagine there's a lot less you got to go through. So right. That's pretty fascinating. I love the approach. Really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the right thing. That's exactly why we chose the pet industry first. because we can move a lot faster. Of course, a lot more simplified regulations, and then a lot of patients out there, and then veterinary oncologists. I can actually, because I spent many years in the human side, so I can actually and honestly, I never imagined that I work for this pet, the cancers. But once I just plunged into this space, I am amazed by the veterinary oncologists who are really willing to adopt new technology, try new technology, and they share the patient samples, of course, under the consent form by the pet parents. But they're super warm, and they're very kind, and they're really willing to move forward with the good technologies.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, and I was really intrigued by your analogy of punching through the wall in a way, that's applicable for any technology in many cases where, yeah, there's this bigger implication and something that you could really go after, but it's going to take a lot more effort and time to get there. And how do you step back and take a smaller step that can be in that journey? So that's a really interesting analogy. That's really the core of what your thinking and strategy is with this, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, and the best thing about this kind of, rather than punching, building up the ladder, is that again, we are doing something during this kind of journey. There are so many companies out there, take 10 or 20 years to build a new therapeutics, and then of course they are collecting and then influencing the people with collecting the knowledge, and then the sharing that knowledge and the data during that journey. But it's what we are doing right now is that we are actually helping other species, save dogs and cats who are suffering from cancer. So we are not just punching, or we're not just building the ladder. During this kind of process, we are helping and we are saving the lives.
Right. So how do you go to market? Is it, typically, is it different than on the human side that you have to still go through the same compliance? How is that different? And then is it really going into veterinarians and, making them aware that this is now a product that they could leverage?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I can do the direct comparison with the human space and then the veterinary space, because now I'm experiencing both of them. So veterinary space, especially, I'm just focusing. I'm going to focusing on the cancer space here and the medical space here. So ecosystem and then the players are very similar here in the veterinary space too. There are the customers and then the payers, and then there are also. So payers usually here is not the insurance company. There are a little bit difference here. In the human space, there are payers. Usually it's an insurance company. But here in the veterinary space, most of the money is from out of pocket, from pet parents. So they are they have a very strong voice, and then they have a good power to decide and then negotiate, discuss with, not the negotiation, discuss with the veterinary oncologists and then the primary doctors for the treatment decision too. So that's kind of different part, but there are doctors who treat the patients, there are payers, and then there are companies who provide, the pharmaceutical companies, the service companies like us. So the ecosystem is very similar, but the difference here is that how we can go into the market. So the process to go into the market, of course, if we are the pharmaceutical company, we are regulated by FDA or USDA, depending on the type of drug that we are developing. But we are in a service company, and we are in a very unique position right now. We are actually in the middle of diagnosis and then the treatment. So what we are trying to do is that once this patient is diagnosed with cancer, the sample comes to us, and then we are in the middle. Before the treatment, we are providing this information. We are a toolbox for the oncologists. So we are providing this information to the doctors to make a better decision. So that's what we do. So we actually talked to USDA and FDA, and then we received the official letter that you guys are bypassing the current regulations. So feel free to do what you guys do, because we are not developing new therapeutics. What we are trying to do is that we are trying to optimize and and personalize the treatment, the regimen for each patient. So that's kind of differences, and then maybe that, and actually that's kind of unique feature for our company. But usually, I can say that the regulation, if we are the service company, the regulation is less rigorous than the human side. But that's the regulation, that's a requirement. So what we can do is that we can just sell our product right away. This is the idea. We're going to charge this amount, and then whatever you think. Of course, there are doctors who may be adopting that, but we did not do that because we always talk to the veterinary oncologists, and then even though there is no requirement, they always want to see the data, and then clinical validation is same as like a human cancer oncologist. So they want to see the data, and they want to see the controlled study. That's why we actually spent last three and a half years to provide our service for free until we actually get this confidence level, and then until we actually reach out to the 2,000 patients' data in our database.
So, Seung-won, would you say that that's kind of the future of medicine, is this personalization? Because that's a fascinating concept. I always say, doctors, I simplify it a little bit, right? But doctors, you come in with pain, they give you, one of a few pain medications. You come in with inflammation, they give you an anti-inflammatory, so on and so forth, right? Super simplification. But what you're talking about is really treating based on the person, right? And their biology, as well as what they have, and then matching that up with the personalized treatment. Is that, am I following? Is that somewhere along the lines of what you're doing?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm a strong advocate, and then I think I advocate for the precision medicine, especially for integrating all the data together, not only just based on the precision medicine is just like basically personalizing the treatment or diagnosis for each individual patient, because every patient has a different response to the same drug. That's actually extremely important for cancer patients, because they don't have time to spend time to treat with waste their time with ineffective drugs. So for them, we really need to come up with effective treatments upfront. So that's what we are trying to do. And then, of course, it's a kind of great concept always. It's been a great concept, or precision medicine, personalized medicine. It's been a great concept for a long time. But 2016, there was a president's budget that's for the precision medicine initiative. A huge amount of money goes there, and then people like the lay audience also know that the term precision medicine. So I think that's a big trend here, and of course we need to go for that. In all this, we are personalizing ads, and then the mobile app, targeted apps, all these kind of things. That is actually happening in the medical side, and which is definitely a lot more critical.
I've been hearing a lot, about AI and mathematics being used in, gene therapy and understanding, all of these, cells, and it goes a little bit over my head. But can you talk to me about how medicine is now using things like mathematics and AI to help solve problems?
That's a great question, and that's what I am very passionate. And then I'm still learning. I'm actually, my background is not a data scientist.
You're gonna know more than me, so go ahead.
A little bit. So I can help you, because I actually went through that kind of process to learning, and then get familiarized with AI thanks to our data scientists. So AI. I think I can share the kind of why I really wanted to build this integrate AI into our company. I think that kind of journey can help you understand that, and then maybe describe how AI can help us. So I had a personal experience in my master's degree. The lab consists of like exactly very similar landscape of what ImpriMed is currently doing. So there is a wet lab scientist who work in the lab, actually dealing with the clinical samples, and then the dry lab team who analyze like virtual cell, design the virtual cell, and then they always just like sticking onto the computer, and then they do all the simulations and then try to find out like the unexpected targets, unrational target. So it actually worked really, really well for my project. So dry lab team found out like 2 really great targets. Human may not be able to think about that target because it's far from our like mainstream, and it worked. Modification, like genetic modification of that in this microorganism produces a great amount of, that achieved the goal. So I was so amazed by that kind of concept, working together with a computational biologist and then the wet lab scientists working together, definitely without this wet lab scientist, AI, or this kind of computational scientists, they can always bring up the new targets. It cannot be validated without this wet lab scientist. So it's a really, really great concept. So I really wanted to build that, but I did not know about the AI. I just always heard, like, as Andy mentioned, I was one of the people like overwhelmed by machine learning and then AI, all this kind of thing. But I know the concept that machine learning can, do all this kind of like collect the, AI and machine learning can do collect all this information together and then find out the good features and then make the kind of, there are so many, we can say that it's black box. We put all these different things there and then let the computer be trained by all the ground truth data, which for us, it's a actual patient's clinical outcome data in the clinic. After the drug injection, how did patients did, all these kind of information put together, and then these machine trained, and then they list up, and they just like without, beyond the human's rational approach, they can bring the computer or this algorithm can bring up some great equation that can digest these input variables. So as I mentioned, like I see the cancer right now, we have a lot of information. So maybe this machine learning can do this digestion. And then if we put all these kind of raw data, they can do their job. And then we have a great power to collect our dog cancer patients' actual clinical response very fast. So that actually worked. So AI here, I was amazed by it. And then what we are doing is a prediction. Which is very, very hard. The prediction cannot be perfect. What we are trying to do is that, like, increase the prediction accuracy more and more with a larger data set. So that's our daily job here. And then, all the conventional methods have all the limitations so far. We have witnessed that, and then I studied that. Like this kind of input is not like one-to-one correlated with a certain clinical outcome. So we need a lot of input because cancer is a systematic disease. So we need all this kind of information and let the computer, which is trained by all the ground truth data, and let the computer do their job and then speed out the prediction score. If you inject this drug into this certain patient, what is the likelihood of success? Success means that what is the probability of reducing the tumor size once you injected this drug. So each drug in our AI model, each drug has its own success rates, the success probability. So based on that, we rank the drug, and then the doctors can see that, these are the viable option for this specific patient, and these are maybe we should avoid this because it's not effective, predicted not effective. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. And so, it's really about what, finding hypothesis faster and then testing that and using those predictions to better understand, a higher likelihood of something being effective.
Exactly.
Is that a good summary?
That's a great summary. I should have an answer like that.
One thing I'm curious about with this, so I get it, and I love AI and I love machine learning and the growth of that. Where do you think, is the wet lab where the creativity comes in? Because I have to believe that there is something to the scientific process that there has to be, the innovation and creativity of ideas and things that just can't even be trained into a system. And so do you think that's where that great balance is between the wet and dry lab?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, definitely. That's the beauty of our company, and then that's I think I really highly recommend the other companies also take a look into this kind of well balance between the wet lab team and the dry lab team, because for example, all this kind of AI, we need the input variable, something that we need to input, put into this black box for the data scientist team's AI model. So this AI model cannot be run, even it would not have been developed without this well lab team, because the way that we start our company is that I'm the biologist, biological background. I have a biological background only. Of course, I wanted to be a computer game programmer, not computer gamer, computer game programmer when I was young, but I switched to the bioengineer later. Anyway, most of my career path was the biological science. So it was kind of natural for me to understand the clinical needs in the medical science. The biggest challenge for this kind of prediction, the cancer prediction or cancer precision medicine, is that most of the people are using the genetic mutations in the cancer cells and then do the prediction based on that. I did not, I actually witnessed, it's great, DNA information, genetic information is great, but it was not enough. So what I really wanted to do is that we need to see the cell as a system, and then keep the cells alive, take the patient's cancer cells outside. Doctors always do that, the tumor biopsy, and then take the cells alive, and then actually treat all different drugs on it to find out the right drug, and then measure the cancer cells' behavior against these anti-cancer drugs, finding out the new drugs. That information is really, really crucial, because it's kind of not the sole prediction. It's kind of evidence-based, because we actually see that this patient's cancer cell actually killed by specific drugs. So that information is very important. But the problem here is that cancer cells just naturally die once it is taken out of the body. That's why we cannot see the company like ours, in the too many companies like ours, which is called functional precision medicine rather than the genetic precision medicine. I'm a strong advocate for the functional precision medicine side. So what I did for the first 4.5 months, once I founded this company, is develop the new liquid to keep the cancer cells alive outside of the body. So in this media, we can keep the cells alive up to 7 days with an 80% viability. Without this, within 4 days, without this media, within 4 days, the cancer cells just die. So it's a too short amount of time to test all different drugs. So we need at least a 1 week period. So without this, it's kind of like initiation of this company, and this media enable all this kind of downstream, like AI, model development, all this kind of drug testing, all these kind of things. And then that's how it initiated this company, and then let our data scientists or dry lab team can develop the new prediction models, and the wet lab scientists also continuously providing this input raw data, and this kind of really big circle here. It's a loop. The machine learning algorithm needs to be continuously evolved and then developed with the new data sets. So that's how, that's why it is very important to be balanced between these two teams.
So I have a question about the team makeup. You're obviously tackling very complex challenges and problems, and the solution you're bringing together is a lot of complexity to that. You have the data science kind of side of the house, and then there's also the biotech, and then you're running, the business side as well. So what does your team look like? And I know you're a co-founder, so I guess start out just like to hear about who else, the other co-founders, and just I would like to hear the blend of who's involved in this.
Yeah, I can start with our co-founders. So I met them through Stanford when I did a PhD. Actually, my plan. I grew up in Korea, South Korea, and then I came to the U.S. like 11 years ago, and then I did master's and then PhD here in the Bay Area. I'm just stuck in the Bay Area and then just fascinated with all this environment here. So my plan, I actually came to the U.S. to do the advanced the academic career and then do the startup later. So that's my goal to why I came to the US. But my plan was that okay, do the PhD to equip myself with a strong weapon and the communication skill set with the other high level researchers, and then work in Genentech or for like at least 3 years to just learn and experience the big company, biotech company in the US, and then start my own company. But it actually came earlier than that. During my PhD, I actually met great people there. I just came up with this idea. I mean, I really want to help, but so obsessed with this kind of what is the best way to help the current people. So that's the initiation in 2012, and I met great people there, and all the co-founders I met through the Stanford, and then one of the main co-founder, his name is Jamin Koo. He's a professor in Korea now. He is a 21-year-old friend. I mean, friend for 21 years, last 21 years. We went to the college together in the same class, and then coincidentally, we started our PhD and then end up the PhD at the same time, same period. So he did the defense right one day after me. So we initiated the same day. We listened to the same classes. So he is one of the most influential people, a few people who influenced my life, and then I respect him really a lot. And he came back to Korea to be a professor, and then he's leading the ImpriMed Korea team. So he is a great scientist, and then great data scientist, a biological, chemical engineer, all this kind of thing. He is a kind of really, really best discussion partner for our technology. So that's and then also we have other co-founders who co-founding team. Of course, they are not too much active because they are positioning as an advisor because they have their own job. Like David is working in Stanford Hospital as a human lymphoma, the doctor, and Maynard is working in the electrical engineering company out there. So those are the co-founding team. But right now we have again the wet lab scientist and then we have dry lab scientist. And I really want to emphasize that I always feel kind of guilty and then feel sorry to our commercial operations team, because business cannot be run without this team. Because whenever I talk about the technology, I always emphasize this wet lab team and dry lab team, but commercial operations and business operations teams, we have great people there, very, very dedicated and very enthusiastic, and then who makes all this kind of work, sample flow and all this workflow go. So I really appreciate those people. We have a VP of commercial operations, and then we have a very talented marketing designer, and then we have a great business operations manager. So these are the people who consist our company, and then every single person is contributing a lot. And then I think that definitely. I bet that all these kind of startups, everyone has wearing a different hair, wearing a different hat, right? All
Yep.
different. So yeah, that's what we do.
So along those lines, what is your role as CEO with all those different disciplines and everything going into this business? What does your role look like, and how has that changed, since the idea and the start?
Yeah. So I really like the quote from my own friend who sold his startup, really successfully exited in the IT space, and he now became a VC, and he's actually the partner of one of the investor group that invested in our company. I liked his quotes that he always said, like, I'm using a CEO, it's a chief executive officer, right? I'm using a CEO for a different, like, my CEO stands for a chief Accentra officer. So I'm doing all different, like, all the miscellaneous things and all this kind of hassles, all these kind of things. I really like that kind of quote. And then I want to become that kind of the CEO. Of course, big decisions, making a vision, and then all this kind of, penetrate my philosophical vision throughout the team, and then always listen to all the team members. Those are kind of general things, definitely, and the most important things that I need to do. But I always want to let our team member do their job. So research scientists just focus on the research, and then the marketing designer, the commercial operations team, they do their sales and marketing and PR, and then data scientists just focus, like laser focus on the model development, all this kind of thing. All the outside, like HR, the payroll, and then the financial, and then of course meeting the investors, and then meeting outside people, reading, all these kind of things. I'm doing that. Yeah.
How have you found the investment process? I mean, most of the founders we talk to, describe it as a second job. Is that it's really a full-time job to find investors, to, raise the money, to stay in touch with people and handle that. So you're a guy with the medical background. You've got this medical and science company that probably needs a lot of hands-on work, but then you've got to do this aspect of raising money. How do you balance that?
Yeah, well, I completely agree with the other founders and CEOs. I would say it's not a second job. I mean, it's actually when there is a fundraising, it needs to be the first job. So my biggest role is to let this community keep going this great journey. So to do that, we need the financial support. That's why we are doing the fundraising and then meeting the investors. I actually really enjoyed this investor pitch and then meeting the investors. I'm actually, I heard from our other, my friends, CEOs, and they just describe this as a pain in the ass, but for me, it's really, really exciting. I have meeting actually, I have an Excel file that so far within the last 4 years, throughout the 2 rounds of fundraising, I met 260 VCs in the Bay Area and then internationally. So you can imagine that every time we meet the investors, we have a little bit different, but almost pitching the same materials, and then always I still enjoy it with the same slide deck. If I meet the investor today and then this morning and then in the afternoon again, if I do the repeat all this kind of presentation again, I'm still very excited about that. Especially I'm very excited about featuring our team member slide and all this kind of thing. I think I'm very lucky to have this kind of preference and the joy to meet people and investors. But I learned a lot throughout the incubator and accelerator. So as you described, I'm a kind of engineer geek, and I thought that I am very good at explaining difficult things and easily to all the other lay audience. But I realized that I was not. I learned a lot when we first joined the first incubator, and then they just taught me a lot how I can just change the language, change the term, and then explain more easily, and then starting from the concept and then to the details, all these kind of things. So throughout this accelerator and then the incubator, I learned a lot. I'm still learning. I have to learn a lot more, but now I'm enjoying a lot more than before, so that I can actually see the investors understand what I'm talking about.
I'm curious to go back a little bit. We talked about the go-to-market, and then we talked about AI, and I want to connect maybe potentially 2 dots. Is You talked about it taking 10 to 15 years, right, for something to really get into the market. But then we talk about AI and machine learning and these other pieces that speed up the hypothesis, the testing, and all of this. Do you see that is ever going to change? Because I would assume the science is happening more rapidly, and I would assume patients have the demand to want these things to go through faster if they're going to be successful. So I don't know. Can you maybe see, is there a connection between those dots of the length of time of go to market and how we're being able to incorporate AI and machine learning?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And then I do agree that those dots will be connected. I mean, we actually are witnessing that already the dots are connected. AI, machine learning already comes into the all different fields. And especially for the medical field, for the patients, right now AI is already being applied for the imaging analysis. Like they can actually detect a very subtle difference in the X-ray, same X-ray. Of course, this will not be able to completely replace the radiologist, but radiologists can use the AI as an aid for their decision maker. And then the data analysis, and then there are the AI machine learning algorithms. The researchers use the machine learning algorithms to only based on the patient's medical record, they can predict that this patient will get to this disease with a certain percentage. So they actually can predict the disease a lot earlier than the actual disease happens. So, and then also the company like ours, we are predicting using the AI to predict the drug response inside the body before they actually got injected. So all these kind of things is already happening here. And then I can imagine that also the drug discovery is a really big part to coming up the new drug, the candidates. AI actually is shrink down and then find out the new drugs here. So all this kind of application is already being happened. And then within 10 years, it will be just like really, really, really be natural. Right now, investors are like, oh, machine learning, AI for this is very new. AI for pets, it's new, but it's going to be a very general term and then kind of general concept within 10 years, I think. And especially for the medical field, I can say. Because the power of AI or machine learning is that they can digest all different data, and then as long as they are trained properly. So the trainer, of course, it's a human. All this kind of what are the ground truths for this simulator, and then once it is properly trained, what they can do is that they can do a great job to digest all different information. Right now, we all know that more and more we are overwhelmed with all different information from everywhere. The issue here is that the key here is that how we can choose and then the mix and combine the information properly for the certain purpose. That's what AI can do better than human. Yeah. So
what are some of the big roadblocks that an organization like yours faces, I guess, in going to market and achieving growth and success? Like, what are the challenges that you typically face?
Yeah, well, challenges, of course, every startup has all different challenges. So does our company. Going into the market with a new technology, like brand new technology, is definitely not easy. We are working with our veterinary oncologists. They are our customers, and then also they need to be the salesperson who actually advertise our service to their clients, which are the patients' parents, pet owners. And then so working with these people in when we are providing our service for free was a lot easier, definitely, because they donate their patient sample for research. And then right now early this year, we started to go into the market, and we are at the commercial stage. We are selling our service with a paid service. So it's definitely not easy starting from the free to paid service. I think everyone understands this point. But more and more doctors are medical doctors, and for the pet, pet owners and the medical doctors, they are moved by the data and then the clinical validation, all these kind of things. That's why we published our paper and working with the other institution to do the clinical studies, all these kind of continuously working and then improve and then share data, present our data in the conferences, all these kind of things. So it's been slow. Our sales, we have very ambitious goal, and it's been slow. But we are every month we see that the sales has been increasing, and I mean it's a difficult problem always. The sales and commercialization is difficult going to the market. But we are very confident about our technology, and there are many doctors who understand that point. So the conversion rate is more than 30%, starting from the free to the paid conversion, more than 30%, which is pretty good. Of course, we need to increase that more. But yeah, that's a challenge. But we are enjoying this kind of the new challenge. Yeah.
Just to go back to your comment about 10 years from now. Machine learning, AI being involved in this type of stuff for biotech and precision medicine, all that. Given that fact that this is the direction everything is headed, how do you, as a co-founder, looking at your business, how do you plan out for the future to ensure that you guys can stay ahead of the curve? Given there's going to be a lot more competition coming in the space, like what does that look like? How do you prepare and plan for that?
Yeah, that's thanks for asking that question. And that's what I like. Every day I think about that, how we can be constantly be the #1 precision medicine company in the pet industry, and then also in the human side later. So I can only, if I can only focus on how our company can sustain. So the biggest challenge for the precision medicine company like ours is that to make a good prediction what is happening inside the body from the outside of the body. To make a good prediction is that we need a large number of clinical data. So to do that, that's why we are starting with pets. All the veterinary oncologists just share the data and the patient clinical samples under the consent form signed, and then these kind of things, once we secure this old veterinary oncologist network, there are only, surprisingly, there are 12 million dogs and cats diagnosed with cancer, but only 450 board certified veterinary oncologists in the US. So that's why they're super busy. But that means that it's a kind of like, easy market acquisition, relatively easier market acquisition. Once we secure all these kind of 450 people secured and then continuously receiving all this kind of new patients sample and then data, I think we can sustain our data addition. The speed of data collection is definitely we will be superior. And then we already shared all this kind of the clinical data, all these kind of things with our doctors. They are convinced by our technology and the research outcomes. So once we have this kind of maintain this network very solid, it's going to be adding a new technology, and then all our new technology will be developed with our pets, our dogs and cats. So right now we are selling our dog blood cancer service, and then it will be translated to cats around the end of this year. And then after that, we're going to move on to the other types of cancer, for example, like bone cancer. And then once it is developed in dogs, it will be translated into the cats and then later into the human. So that all the new technology is being generated from this pet cancer space. So once we secure this, and then once we have a good amount of cash cow from this pet industry, I think we can have our self-funded, self-sustaining, financially self-sustaining, and also that can be used for the human the cancer application development. So the key thing here is that keep a good network and a good relationship with our veterinary oncologists and veterinary doctors, and then expand, to other pet markets. We are planning to go into the European market in 2023, and then we already set up our lab in South Korea and Japan. So all these kind of things will be, very exciting. And then, but it's it's never end. The question never ended. The answer to this question never ended. I need to continue to think about how we can do better and better. Yeah.
That's great. And it sounds like something that you're always thinking about. So I appreciate you sharing.
Thank you.
So what aspects do you think are different from the human market and the pet market? I have 3 dogs and a cat, and I know what they think, but they can't speak to me yet. So, I mean, I assume obviously your end patients can't give you a ton of direct feedback. Maybe their pet parents can, but besides that, what are other differences in working with pets, like pricing, who you need to convince, whether you can get the data about the, quality of life after treatment? What are these differences that you think you're gonna have to face with pets over humans?
That's a great question. So, yeah, I mean, you nailed down the differences actually, and then that's why we see we usually say that like our pet cancer patients are very similar to the human pediatric cancer patients. So they don't speak and they express just like crying and then just like all these kind of things. That's why we need to be a lot more careful about like listening to what they are trying to say. And then the cancer itself is very similar to the pediatric cancer, and then the dog and cat cancers. Those are very similar too. But other than that, for the pricing point, so for example, our company is a B2B company. We sell our service to the veterinary clinics, especially veterinary specialty hospitals. And then veterinary specialty hospitals, they add their own margin to the pet owners. So we cannot control that margin. For our companies, we cannot do this service yet to the direct to consumer, because patients need to come to the hospital and they need to get the biopsy, the sampling, and the doctors or nursing staff, they need to do that procedure. So they need to come to the hospital, and then the decision maker should be the mainly through the oncologists. Of course, they are discussing with the pet owners, but so that's why we need to do the B2B. So we cannot control the end price, but we always try our best to convince the doctors that we minimize your additional burden. It's very simple. Once they take out the patient sample, it's done. All the other like downstream process, we take care of the shipping, and we take care of all the sample processing, and then send out the reports, and then explain about how we read the report, all these kind of things. So really, we have been giving our best effort these days to convince the doctors that minimize the margin for the pet owners. We really want to see that more, as many pet owners use our the service, as many as possible. So we have some kind of success there. They only had add some minimum margin because they are convinced that this is very, very essential service for their clients. But all the like big hospitals, we're still negotiating. That's kind of differences, I think. The price point, and then of course the insurance company. There are insurance companies out there, but statistically there are only like 9 to 11% of the pet owners are using the pet insurance yet, because they don't cover the big disease like cancer or infectious disease. So that's why, but more and more insurance companies are starting to do the cancer coverage. So I think the pricing and the payer, this kind of ecosystem will be changed in the next 5 years.
And I generally think there's like a trend of pets seeing much more as family. You know, I remember years ago the debate of always like, well, if they, you know, there was some sort of disease and it cost $10,000 for my pet, would I be willing to? Your child, you're always going to say yes. Your pet, you question it. But today it feels like people are a little bit more, you know, in that space where money isn't as much of an object to make sure that their pet is healthy.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what I realized, and then what I surprised here once I just like jumped into this space. People, you know, we spend like, you know, the $10,000. So if my dog got the cancer, for example, lymphoma, and then if my dog is diagnosed with lymphoma, doctors will ask me like, are you gonna go to the treatment? And if I say yes, that means that basically it's at least it's gonna spend. I need to spend around like more than $10,000 or $15,000. But people spend that money just because exactly the same reason that you mentioned, Andy. We see our dogs and cats as our family. And then interestingly, there are a human insurance company starting to include the pet as a family, do the pet insurance, not like separately out the pet insurance. They are the family insurance that they can take care of this kind of veterinary costs too. So it's a big trend here. And then US is actually definitely is the number one country in the world who have that kind of like, you know, that kind of concept, and then the family concept. Yeah.
So we got a few minutes left here before we wrap up. This has been fascinating. Just real quick, where can our viewers find out more about you and ImpriMed and pay attention to what you guys are up to?
Yeah, sure. Of course, you can learn more about our company. Just type ImpriMed in Google or ImpriMedicine.com. That's our website. We included plenty of good, you know, the amount of information there. You can learn more. If you are a veterinarian, you can click the 4 vets, and then you can, if you are the pet owners, pet parents, you can click the 4 pet parents there. There are tabs and then information categorized like properly for each audience. And also, yeah, you can find our company in the LinkedIn, and then we have Instagram too, ImpriMedicine. And also, if someone who wants to reach out to me personally, I definitely have a LinkedIn personal page, so you can just message me. And yeah,
that's great.
So, if you were able to go back in time, what advice would you give to your younger self?
That's a good question. I can see that my younger me definitely are trying to do the startup, like go to the startup career and then startup journey. I just want to let that younger me that whatever you are imagining, the difficulties you're imagining, you will be overwhelmed. I mean, it will be a lot more difficult than you imagine, but just be persistent and trust your team, and then love your team and trust your vision. And if you feel like any difficulties, just give at least like one more shot with, you know, with all your best. So if it's not be done like what you wanted, there is still another way to reach out to the end goal. So it can be a detour. Things cannot be always straight. So it can be a detour, but you can learn a lot from the detouring. Yeah.
That's great.
Awesome. Well, Seung-won, thank you so much. This has been outstanding. We appreciate your time here in the conversation. Everybody, I would recommend you guys check out what ImpriMed is up to. Visit their site, follow them on social. But thank you. We will be back next week with another episode, and we look forward to more great guests. Thanks again, Seung-won. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Andy. Bye.
Take care.